Let's talk about the S word, submission. The word that rings in infamy at every marriage retreat, in every counseling session, and God forbid a husband let the word slip out of his mouth. But why? Why are women so anti-submission? After all, it means to submerge under a mission. Aren't we all excited about the opportunity to follow a well-designed plan? Not unless we are driving the plan or have enough influence so that we can feel comfortable with the plan. Either way, for some reason, as women, we have to be involved in order to submit. We struggle with total submission. And we have to have an honest conversation about submitting. You know, feminism tells women submitting to your husband is a mutual partnership grounded in respect, equality, and shared decision making. It all sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It's more about collaboration than hierarchy, is what they say. They believe a healthy relationship means both partners share all the responsibilities. They say it can mean being open to compromise and allowing space for one partner to lead in areas where they're stronger and more knowledgeable, while both partners have an equal say and all works in harmony and balance. Well, ladies, this is not accurate. It's certainly not an accurate picture of submission. It's a picture of what I believe a woman would like submission to look like. It's also a picture of what I believe will be written by a woman or women who have become face to face with true submission and got scared. Because the truth is, if submission doesn't scare you a little bit, then you're not doing it right. Because authentic submission requires a complete denying of yourself, a killing of your fleshly desires, saying no to that desire and an innate passion that we feel inside to want to stand in the place of leadership that's reserved for our men. It requires us to trust God fully by placing our life direction in the hands of our selected leadership, our husbands. This is why marriage and saying I do is so vitally important, because you're saying I do to the mission. The Bible doesn't tell men to submit to wives. It tells men to love their wives and be willing to give your life for your wife, which that's kind of a big one too. But it tells women to submit to our husbands. And there's always this typical response that we want to lean on Ephesians 5:21, where it talks about submitting one to another as our reverence to Christ. But the only problem is that he wasn't speaking to marriage. He was speaking to the body of Christ, encouraging all of us to walk in love and love each other one to another. He doesn't begin to give specific instructions until you go to the verse right below it. Verse 22, where it says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church." And if you skip down to verse 24, I believe God knew that we would have a trouble as women interpreting what he really meant by submitting and whether or not it meant to submit everything or some, or what does it really mean. So he wanted to make it clear. So in verse 24, it says, "Now, as the church submits to Christ," okay, so mirror your submission to God, submitting to the church, "so also wives should submit everything to their husbands." And if we could just pause for a second. We seem to not have any issues with God submitting itself, humbling itself to submit to the church, but we have a problem submitting to our husbands. But see, then it goes on and it commands the husband to love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for the church. He doesn't command the husband to submit to the wife in any way. There's no mutual beneficial submission going on. And we have to tell the truth. Telling women that there's a mutual submission sets women up for failure. And it makes her the seed of discourse in her own home. constantly fighting to get your leadership in and get your advice on top of the pile. Women, I want you to do me a favor. If you're not driving and you're somewhere where you can sit quietly, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to lean back. And I want you to ask yourself an important question. Do I trust my husband to lead? Am I a woman who is willing to trust a man to lead me? If the answer is no, then that's the root of the problem. Now I want you to ask yourself, why? And I want you to begin to write down why you struggle with yielding trust and yielding the plan to your spouse, to your husband, or to the man that God will bring in your life. Does he make poor financial decisions, or do you feel like you're better at making financial decisions? Have you been cheated on and you lost trust in anyone being able to love you completely? Were you raised in the church and you feel like I may be the spiritually strong one, or I am the spiritually strong one? Is his relationship with God weak, and are you just simply afraid that he's not going to listen to God? Is he emotional and you're concerned that his leadership would be heavily emotional? Whatever it is, write it down. Be vulnerable. Be as vulnerable as you can be. This list is only being shared between you and God. Push through the pain, push through the tears, push through the frustration, and empty out the fear that's connected to submission. And put it on that paper, and put that paper before God. And once you have it all out, I want you to begin to pray about those things, that God will either fix that in your spouse, or that he will help you by fixing those fears in you, so that you'll be willing to receive someone that you can submit to. Or if you're already married, then I want you to turn that over to God, and I want you to get up and I want you to go submit. Because we don't submit after the prayer is answered. We submit while the prayer is being answered. So if you're single, then yes, you just keep praying. You don't have anyone to submit to other than God. But if you're married, then you need to pray and submit at the same time. Many of our men are not stepping in their rightful place because it's already occupied. It's occupied with our control, and it's occupied with our anxieties and all of our fears associated with his decisions. He can never do it right, because there's always going to be a better way. There's always a way that's your way that's got to be better. And we're not being honest. And we're not being honest with ourselves. And we're not being honest about how difficult it is to submit, because it requires a complete and total trust in your husband's ability to lead the home, which is a complete and total trust in God's ability to honor your submission by assisting your husband. It means, yes, his plans and not yours. It means your plans are put on the back unless the mission brings it forward. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to trade in your plans for his plans, meaning God's plans. Submitting is hard, but it's even harder when trying to hang on to feminism, which is why you must detox feminism.